This here is from a company called ZZEW, I think, or Caboo, something like that. The name of the case is a C1, I know that for a fact, but there's really no other branding on the Amazon page. You can see it links to a store called Caboo, or however you pronounce that word, but then the branding on the box says ZZEW. So I don't know. Anyway, the product photos look to be interesting. I thought the front panel design was pretty cool. I'm not sure about the internal layout. This could be a disaster to build in, who knows? That's the whole point of this video. We're gonna find out. I'm going into this with an open mind, just because, you know, this case isn't something that has really penetrated US markets yet. There's not a ton of advertising in this. I don't know of any brand like this reaching out to YouTubers and I don't know, other media outlets here in the States to promote cases like these. So I figured I would just give it a fair shot, and we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm assuming it's made and manufactured in China, probably just marketed in China as well, because there appears to be Chinese writing down here. I don't know, I think it's Chinese. But I think you will enjoy the build process regardless. Again, my raw impressions, those should be rather interesting. Stay with me. To get rid of that annoying Windows activation watermark, head on over to VIP SCD Key and purchase a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for a fraction of the price of retail. Just use a secure payment method like PayPal, enter your product key into your PC settings window, and say bye-bye to the watermark. And be sure to use our offer code SKGS for a sweet discount. So let's kick things off by talking about the box. My impressions when I picked this thing up when it was delivered, brought it inside, it is fairly light. I could lift this up very safely with 4 fingers. That suggests potentially that it is not made from anything very dense, maybe very thin steel. I doubt it's aluminum in this price range. Could be plastic. That would suck. Again, I don't know too much about this. I bought it because of the pictures, and that's about it. I know that it only supports micro ATX motherboards and smaller, so there's that restriction. And like I said, we do have a lot of Chinese writing all the way around the box. To some folks, especially here in the States, they think that because it's manufactured in China, it's of lesser quality. My friends, most popular PC cases here in the States are still manufactured in China, okay? That's how it is. So you can't just say, oh, it's made in China, it's crap. You'd be surprised how much stuff is made in China. That's really about it. The fragile logos, I think those are kind of funny. I mean, yeah, it's nice that they're there, but I almost see that as like a challenge for the shipping folks. Oh, it says fragile, so that means I gotta throw it extra far now. I also love how it says handle with care. There's an odd spacing between the L and the E there, but also don't fall, not pressure. Not pressure, just in case you missed that. So let's get it open then and see what all the fuss is about. Amazon switched the way that they package these. I just realized this tape goes across nothing. There's no seam here. Like, what is that? How do we open? Oh, we have to open it from the top. Okay. Ooh, okay. Get a couple boxes here, and let's flip it over. Get this thing out. Come on there. There we go. You can see it's not very big. It's, like I said, only mATX, so you won't be able to fit full-size motherboards in it. But I like compact cases. I think that's a worthy compromise. You know, we have plenty of ATX cases on the market already, so something a bit different should look pretty cool. Wow, yeah, this looks pretty unique. So, I mean, I don't know, something. Looks like something's breaking in there. Oh, that's just the dust filter. Okay. I mean, it feels like it feels like metal. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel plasticky. So that's nice. It's a start. And this here is actually the front of the case. You can see you got your power button here in red down at the bottom, 2 USB 3.0 type A ports. Just a bunch of circles everywhere, which should be great for airflow. I think this color is pretty cool. You've got this red here for the thumb screws that retain the left side panel made of tempered glass. And you also get red for the power button. And then the rest of the case is kind of like a, I don't know, a gray anthracite color. I did just have these 2 things fall out of the case, so I have no idea where they go. I'm hoping they aren't vital. So let me give you a quick run through of this beauty. The more I stare at it, the more I appreciate the minimalism, because I mean, everything's literally gonna go right here. Like, there's nowhere else to put anything. There's no back panel. There's nothing behind the motherboard tray. It is literally just one solid piece of metal going all the way around. There's no seam. And that means that, well, you might run into some issues with some power supplies and extra long cables, but I don't think it's a huge issue because it's not a super compact case. It is small. It's definitely smaller than your standard ATX mid-tower, but it's not tiny. So there's that. You're going to be connecting all of your peripherals, etc., underneath the case because your motherboard has its rear I/O facing downward. You do have a rubber grommet here to route everything through, so it keeps it looking nice and clean. You can connect your power supply right here. I like that they have a dedicated connector for this. This will, of course, run up to your unit, which will mount up here. And then the front side, you can see you've got the cool little designs, like the double circle effect, and you have 4 slots here for a pretty beefy graphics card. It'll stretch all the way up. They also give you dedicated cutouts here for sliding your screwdriver through to secure your PCIe devices. So it's nice. I thought that through. A lot of cases just overlook this, and it's very awkward trying to get a screwdriver at an angle to secure a graphics card. So here's the underside of the case. You can see we don't have too much going on, just a few cables running to our front I/O, which is fairly minimal. That is a downside I've noticed. Of course, we have the power button, or the, not the power button, but the power cable that runs to your power supply internally, so you don't have to worry about awkward connections from your junction box or from your power outlet. The only other thing I've noticed here, clearance is acceptable, but you will have to kind of torque your HDMI cable or DisplayPort cable, whatever you're using for your graphics card. It's going to be a bit awkward trying to angle that and wedge that into your card because there's just not a ton of distance between the base of the PCI slots and these rubberized feet. And I just realized what ZZAW stands for, Zen Zone Art World. That's a really weird name for a PC case company. Maybe they do more than this, but it's just strange seeing 4 words to denote the brand of the case. I don't know. I mean, it's fine. It's small at least. This isn't big font or anything. Now with the C1, you will get a single dust filter, and I'm assuming this goes up front because your card will be pulling in air, your graphics card, into the shroud from the front, if you want to call this the front. I think that's safe to say. The rear, it looks like we have a couple 120 mil mounting points. We might just go with like a low profile CPU cooler, air cooler, not going water cooled with this one. But this single dust filter, it's odd. Usually these have like little magnetic strips around the edges so that they can stick to the case. I don't know if it's because this material is not like your standard steel or what, but they gave us like weird 3M tape around the edges of this thing. So it's literally just gonna adhere to it. I don't know. I don't even think I want to use this. Oh, and I just realized there's actually a third place to mount a 120 mil fan. I just had to double check because it looked a bit small, but nope, a 120 mil will fit. And actually to install this, you'll need to remove this small little plate and then you'll screw it back down at the corners. I also want to test power supply fitment because, well, I'm super curious. Look at there, full size ATX, no problem. We'll even still be able to fit our 120 mil fan in there, I think. So super tight fit. They made this case just deep enough to fit a standard ATX PSU and a 120 mil fan. That's pretty impressive. So I think with that little preview out of the way, we are ready to build in it. That's really going to be the deciding factor for me. So far, I'm impressed. I will say I'm impressed with the way the case looks. The build quality is decent. It feels structurally sound. It's not like super wobbly or anything. And it looks like there's enough space here to get the job done. It's going to be tight, yes, but that's kind of the point of this. You have to know that going into it. So let's get, a 12th gen Intel build in here.
Day 2.
So I wanted to wait for this to show up here. This is an Intel Core i5 12500. Again, still Intel 12th gen, LGA 1700 socket, but yeah, it's more of a budget option. I haven't worked with budget 12th gen stuff yet, so figured why not for this build? Now for the cooler, I decided to go with Noctua's NH-L9i. Now this is designed specifically for the LGA 1700 socket, but you can find other versions of this for different platforms. I did notice a few negative reviews on Amazon for this specific cooler, and it seems that people are trying to pair this with like 12900Ks and 12700Ks. This is very clearly a lower TDP cooler. Noctua tells you as such, but folks insist on pairing these things with like overpowered Intel chips. I don't know. The 12500 though will pair nicely with this here. For the motherboard, we've gone with an MSI Mag B660M motor. Big thanks to them for sending this out. We of course needed an mATX board for this case. It's also very difficult to find some mATX boards for the latest Intel platform, so glad that we have this one here. The fact that it's a B-series chipset, perfectly fine with our 12500. And lastly for our RAM here, a good old-fashioned Vengeance DDR5, never hurt anyone. 32 gigs should be more than enough, even though we're not going to be really doing anything with the system. We're just building in a cool case. Also, cue Pepsi. Pepsi girl. Hey! Hey, baby girl. Well, I'm sure glad we decided not to go with the stock cooler that comes with the 12500 because we're missing a blade. Actually, it broke off in the box. I bought this brand new from Amazon and the cooler's already toast, so That's always fun. Let's get the CPU out of here. This process is always a tad bit stressful. There's a ton of small little pins in these LGA sockets that you want to be very careful of. We always mention this, or try to at least, when installing these CPUs because, well, a few bent pins and you could have a very bad time. Just check out our Fix or Flop playlist for more examples. Let's see, get that back down and then tension clip in place. Alrighty, CPU install. DDR5 install is straightforward. Slots 2 and 4 we'll be concerned with here. I'm gonna drop the first one in. Let's see if I can do it from this angle. I don't think so. Oh, yep. Okay, and let's try the second one a bit closer to the camera. Yeah, there we go. Now, this Noctro cooler is super sleek and compact. I love how heavy it is as well. It feels dense, it feels premium. You can see the cold plate there on the back. It's not quite the size of an LGA 1700 chip, but it should do again for these lower TDP applications. The way to install this, I've found, just flip the entire thing upside down. So set this on your desk, then turn the motherboard over, and then you can tighten things from below. So basically, we'll take the cooler and prop it up just a tad, maybe something like, yeah, how am I supposed to rotate this? Something like this here. And then we'll take the motherboard, with thermal paste applied, mind you, it shouldn't be too runny. We'll flip it upside down, and we'll try to align the holes in the board with the threads in the cooler. This could prove a bit difficult without a light. I think something like that there is going to be good. And then we'll take these Phillips screws and thread them through. And with it all tightened down, I'm going to flip it back over. And yeah, check that out. I love just the low profile package overall. It looks very, very clean. Fan is connected up top here. We can now get this thing in our C1 chassis. Just gonna drop it in, and don't worry about the back plate. It is integrated with this board, which is nice, just less hassle. It's gonna sit something like that right there. I think all of our standoffs are pre-installed for mATX to begin with. And yeah, that looks about lined up. By the way, case screws you'll get with the C1 are the chrome finish, not blacked out, which is probably a small cost-saving measure, but I don't think it's a big issue here because the case is, well, it's gray, so it kind of works. Okay, and with a few things wired in, I have now run into our first problem that I kind of expected with this case, and that is cable management. So while it is all kind of open here, and that's nice, there's no clear way to route, particularly front I/O. You can see we've just got it running along the front side here of the case, but you know, especially this USB 3.0 cable, I really hate these. This connects on this board up here, which is the top of the board, but it's really the right side of the board because usually it's oriented right like that. But since this case is kind of different, it means that this cable is stretching all the way across to get here. And if we have an especially long graphics card, this is going to be a problem, right? It doesn't work. So what you might end up having to do is route your cables through the dedicated cutout for rear I/O, or front I/O in this case. And that means these cables are going to run between the graphics card and your cooler, which looks really stupid. I'd prefer to have them out of sight. I can tie them down up front here. And to me, that just looks a lot cleaner. But it's just not practical for longer cards, so I don't know. And then this over here, this is going to connect to our power supply. It's going to be a very tight fit, but that's what they intended. And I guess we're just going to wedge this cable kind of beside the fans, between the fans and the front of the case. So we'll figure it out. Next up is our power supply. I've got the included bracket already mounted to it, and we're going to go ahead and slide this in the case. Remember, this will be positioned at the top of the case if you're laying it the way that they intend for you to. We'll want to make sure that we go ahead and flip the switch here at the rear because we probably won't be able to get to it after this. We'll connect the cable, which is going to be a very tight fit. Make sure this is all the way in. And then this will all just kind of slide in like so. I think we can pull it off. Although now that I'm looking at it, I'm not sure if we're going to get a front fan here because of these cables. They'll probably get snagged in it. Yeah, it's actually not a difficult install. It's just different. So if you're used to building the same kinds of cases over and over, this will be a bit of a challenge, and I'm up for that. For a case that looks this unique, I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, I think we are definitely scratching this top 120mm fan. We could, in normal circumstances, mount up there, but I want to have all of our excess cabling tucked up here. It's just gonna look nicer to have it all in one place versus being scattered in front of the motherboard. So we're gonna have, yeah, all of it just kind of run toward the top right, and then we'll just take a few zip ties, tie things down, try to clean it up as best we can. This is also going to impede longer graphics cards again, so you'd really have to compromise quite a bit in the way of cable management to get longer cards to fit. That's just my observation here, based on just using a typical ATX PSU. And even longer ATX PSU, something that stretches out to here maybe, a lot of like the P2 power supplies from EVGA and the like, those are very large, and that could totally compromise any longer graphics card. So one of the only downsides I've really run into in terms of hardware compatibility yet, the 120 up top, and yeah, potential longer card issues. We got these two extra 120mm fans here to exhaust air, and well, I mean, you gotta remember, you don't get any fans with this case, so if you want to populate the extra fan areas in the chassis, and you're gonna have to buy some extra fans, so that'll raise the overall cost of the unit. The other thing I noticed when I was installing these is that we're a bit short on case screws. So case fan screws have a certain threading, and if you don't have any extras of these, you're kind of screwed. You have to either zip tie the fan or, I don't know, super glue it, duct tape it, something super jank. You only get 4 of these screws to hold in a 120mm fan, which means you can only technically mount 1 fan if you don't have any extra screws. Now, of course, I do this for a living, so I have tons of these screws. I could use them, but just to prove a point, I'm only going to use 2 for each fan, and I've got a little cross pattern going here. The higher fan also has 2, kind of a cross pattern, so it is what it is. If you want to populate the 3rd fan slot, then you're really not going to have any extra case screws to take care of that. So I find it strange and disappointing that the C1 doesn't have enough case fan screws to populate the very few fan mounting points in the chassis. Only a couple more steps then. First we gotta get the graphics card in there. Obviously, I'm gonna cheat a bit and go with an RTX 2060 Founders Edition. This is a smaller, more compact card, which means it should fit nicely in the case. It also has kind of a nice, it's slightly bluer tint of gray to it all the way around, but it should still, I mean, it works. This looks more like a magnesium color, but it's the best I can do. And after that, we'll just cable manage a bit, and we'll power the system on, make sure that it all works. Overall impression so far, I'm mostly impressed, just given, yeah, the building experience. I mean, a few compromises. We knew that going into it. Disappointed about the case screws, but that's, I mean, that's a very small point, not a huge deal to probably most people. Yeah, I'm kind of shocked. We'll pull back on this tab and we'll just slot the 2060 in. It's gonna be a bit weird doing it from this angle. We've definitely gotta maneuver around the USB 3.0 cable. But when it's all said and done, I think that looks pretty sharp. Okay, and with that, I believe we are finished. I'm just gonna rotate this zip tie around. Again, it's not the cleanest up top, but it is what it is. There's nowhere else to hide these. We don't have space behind the motherboard tray. There really is no motherboard tray, so to speak. It's just kind of like one big unibody. So I think that's about as clean as we can get it within, you know, a reasonable time frame. I'm satisfied with it. So I've got to say, wow, what a hit. This case looks really good with components inside. I didn't even mean to color coordinate. I mean, you've got the, you know, the lighter gray, silverish accents on the motherboard. Again, more of a bluish color for the graphics card, and then just a general dark gray for the case. But it actually all looks really good in there when light's shining on all the components. I'm surprised how well it works, and I think overall it's a pretty clean build as well. I mean, considering, again, we don't have space behind a motherboard tray, we don't have any like specific area, dedicated place to store extra cables. We did what we could, and if this was my build, I'd be perfectly satisfied with this. I'm kind of impressed with the use of space here. My only major complaints are with graphics card clearance. For one, depending on where a USB 3.0 header is, this could be a problem, and it certainly isn't gonna look good having the cable just run in front of the motherboard. So I tried my best to route around it. If we had used a larger card, we'd have had no choice. This build would have definitely looked a bit less clean. I also think they could have done a better job with these cables here at the bottom. You have 2 separate USB 3.0 type A ports with their cables running to, of course, the header on the motherboard, but they just kind of stick out here, and they intend for you to route it through this hole. Well, this hole puts these cables directly on top of the motherboard, which, you know, that could lead to snagging of the CPU cooler fan. It just doesn't look very clean, so not really optimal. I routed these actually between the PCI slot covers in the case, and it looks, I think, cleaner from the front, but underneath you can see they're twisted and it doesn't look very good. I would have liked to have seen these cables run in a dedicated fashion along the front edge of the frame, and then that would keep them out of sight and out of mind for the graphics card as it pulls in air from the front, and then we could route these much more in a much more clean fashion. And one more super small complaint I have, I'm getting really picky at this point, but I'm just trying to highlight every feature that you'll come across if you happen to buy this. These PCI slot covers, they look like they're ripped out of an old HP OEM, so yeah, I mean, it's not terrible, but they could look a little better than this. They don't even do a good job matching the case. You can see this is a much lighter shade of silver or gray than the chassis is, but at least you don't have to see them too much because they're kind of at the bottom tucked away. Now in my searching down here, I did find an extra hidden 92mm, I believe this is 92mm, fan mount. It's certainly smaller than 120, so it's not going to be a standard fan size. It's actually about the same size as the Noctua cooler fan. So again, that's why I think it's 92. It looks to be about the same dimensions. But you know, if you wanted to add one here, you could as well. But again, you've got the screw issue. You don't have extra screws. Unless the fan you buy comes with screws, you're going to be kind of screwed. Haha, that was a good one. But apart from these few issues, if you want to call them that, I am overall impressed. What it's going to come down to now is price. I don't remember how much I paid for it, so we're going to check that at the very end of this video. But first, let's make sure that it powers on. Now, one slightly annoying feature about cases like this, and the NZXT H1 is also guilty of it, you've got to connect everything at the bottom, and that just means that installation's a tad bit awkward. Just I don't want to bend that HDMI cable too much. There we go, and we'll connect power here. At the rear, the PSU switch is already flipped in the on position. So we'll plug in, and then I believe we're good to power on. All right, things look pretty good so far. We do have Dr. Debug LED, so that's nice on this board. Just waiting for a post then. Yep, all right, there it is. Okay, so the system works. That's great to it's great to see. And now I guess closing thoughts on the ZZEW C1. I think that's what it's called, right? ZZEW? Why did it just turn off? It's a feature. It's just a feature. Ooh, it turned off again. It's also a feature, just a feature. Make sure it doesn't do it a third time. Okay, maybe it's just, I don't know, freaking out because there's no operating system in there. I don't know, but looks good now. Oh, okay, we're in the BIOS now, so that's great. Awesome. Temps, I'm curious about temps. What are they right now? 31 degrees Celsius. That is nice and cool. Corsair's Xeneon 32QHD 165 is a versatile monitor chock full of leading tech for your gaming and content creating needs. Enjoy a quantum dot, color accurate 32-inch fast IPS display with a blazing fast refresh rate of up to 165 Hz for ultra smooth picture. Couple that with a 1 millisecond response time and you've got yourself a sweet gaming panel. And with its sleek and slim ergonomic profile, which of course doesn't hurt, it's sure to impress on any desk. You can learn more about it by clicking the link below. So I'm a big fan of the C1 and I really want to recommend it. Like I said, the deciding factor for me is going to be price. Of course, that usually is how it works here. I'm just going to see what I paid for it. We'll see what it's listed for now just to make sure there aren't any huge price fluctuations. And let's see, when did I buy this? Jeez, I bought a bunch of stuff in between then and now. Okay, the C1 Micro ATX case, because that's how it's labeled on Amazon, is listed for $149. Which is a bit of a premium. Yes, it's kind of tough to justify. It's a bit higher than I was hoping. I was hoping for like 100 to 120. I don't think this is worth more than 120. And the only reason I'd say up to 120 is because it is so different. The design is different. You can tell the machining that went into this. It's very unique, and it's not your typical kind of thin steel mid-tower. That's what sets it apart. It has its quirks, but most cases in this category have their quirks. That's what people love about them. This is actually an aluminum alloy, which I was a bit hesitant to call it aluminum at first because it was so light, but I mean, that's one of the trademarks of aluminum. It's a lighter metal, but it's an alloy of aluminum, so it's probably a bit stronger than the typical stuff, and as a result, I mean, it looks really clean, right? You've got just one solid piece wrapping pretty much all the way around the case. You can tell they bent it very nicely. The machining, the tooling that went into this is pretty top-notch. It's premium. Is it 150 premium? I don't know. It's on the cusp. At this point, it's a bit of a letdown. But that said, I don't think it's the end of the world. Again, this being a case in a pretty unique position, they could probably afford to charge a bit more, just being blunt. Folks looking for different stuff, you know, just stuff that's out of the ordinary, it's not like anything else that you'll probably see in US markets, they're willing to pay a bit more. And usually these more compact cases have a bit of a premium to them anyway because of the construction, the unique tooling that goes into it, which raises prices during manufacturing. I'm going to show you this picture here because I didn't really talk about storage drive support. You can see that off to the right, they actually have two 3.5-inch hard disk drives positioned directly in front of the graphics card fan shroud, and I think that is another pretty glaring mistake. If you want to use a 3.25-inch drive, that's probably the only place you can put it. They have a couple of adapters that you'll get in the box, and I think that's just awful for airflow. You're gonna be choking that card, it's gonna be running a bit hot. As it is now, this is not a hot box, and I don't need to run tests to prove that to you. There are other channels that really like spending the time to get into the nitty-gritty details of case airflow. I just personally don't really care that much about case airflow. Like, if it looks pretty good, it's probably pretty good. And if it looks like it's going to be a hot box, it's probably going to be a hot box. A lot of this is common sense, right? Now, a few degrees Celsius here or there, I mean, if you want to be that picky, then of course you can find that data online. But I can just tell you from looking at this, especially without the dust filter up front, this case is very airy. You shouldn't have any problems at all with thermals, especially on the graphics card side of things. But with that, I will link the ZZEW C1, however you say that, C1, we're just gonna call it the C1 again. I will link this in the video description along with all the gear that you've seen in this PC build. If you wanna check any of that stuff out, tied to our Amazon affiliate links, that will give us a small kickback, and that will be greatly appreciated. Check out our other gear down there, what we use to shoot videos like these. We've got our social media links, and also the usual stuff. Subscribe, like, why did I show the like when I said subscribe? Yep, subscribe, like, there we go, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the C1. With that, I'm gonna get out of here. My name is Greg. Thanks for building with me.